So this week we are talking about acting and actors. I want to kind of talk a little bit about the two main things I want to talk about this week are going to be the difference between representational and presentational styles as far as acting methods. And then I want to talk about acting for the stage versus acting for film. So first I want to talk about acting styles and methods and like rhetorical traditions. So first of all, theater kind of came out of, we've talked a little bit about, we've read about the Greeks and where theater began. And so it all started with music. And so there would be a chorus on stage. And then slowly more and more actors started getting introduced back in classical Greece, and then as it evolved, more and more things started being added. So the original kind of actors really had to have very strong voices and singing voices because a lot of it was music. And it was all being projected. They had to really be able to project because it was mostly outside, and they were doing things that were more presentational style. So presentational means it's not trying to imitate real life. So it's really like about masks and really big declamatory performances. So it is really a lot over the top. Right, so it's a lot more things that are very dramatic and using masks and using big showmanship sort of things more than trying to really tap into showing a real person. So then we moved into the representational style, which is really the most common still today, right? So it's a lot of times people trying to portray real human beings and create real characters from the scripts that they have. So realism really started with Konstantin Stanislavski. So he really kind of got the realism and the psychoanalysis going, and his method is still taught a lot of places. I used his method in my acting class, actually. So Moscow Art Theater in 1898 is sort of where he started teaching this style, and he started teaching the representational style. So the representational style is really, like I said, tapping into being that person, developing a real character that seems like a real person. So something that you have to look at when you're using that method are given circumstances, first of all, which are going to be the things that the playwright has included. So does this character have a stutter or a limp? Is this character going to be somewhere that's very hot or cold, or are they going to be drunk? So different kinds of given circumstances that you have to sort of work with. Then you want to look at character objectives. So you want to sort of look at exactly what is the purpose, like what does this character want and how are they going to try to get it. So you have to, when you analyze the script, you're really looking into exactly what is it that the character wants. And that can be, are you trying to get a friend who's really conservative to take a walk on the wild side? Are you trying to find a friend that's missing? Are you trying to get to safety? Like, what exactly do you want? And things can change that. Interactions with other characters can come in and change your objectives. So you have to be able to understand you could have multiple objectives in one scene. Sense memory is going to be thinking about like actually feeling a certain way and remembering those things that you felt before. So if you have been somewhere that you have been drunk, or I'm sure you haven't, good people of this class, but if you have been drunk before, if you've been really cold before, those sorts of things that you can remember those things. An effective memory also is going to be a lot of times really what you want to do is you want to think about oftentimes sort of if you haven't experienced something like this, what have you experienced that's like that? So you want to think about that as well. So you can think, okay, well, I've never tried to talk a friend into staying alive when they wanted to commit suicide, but I have tried to talk my mom into giving me a later curfew. So clearly not the same situation, but it's still getting somebody to do something that you want them to do that they really don't want to do. So think about an experience that you have had. That's another part of that method, is tapping into something that you have experienced that you can use. So that realistic style is really about connecting as a person. So there are mostly contemporary realistic performances, but there are some contemporary presentational performances. A lot of those are influence of Asian forms. A lot of Asian theater is very presentational. Western in the West, and most often you would see musicals being presentational performances. So some over the top, because that's not trying to portray a real life situation. Most of the time people aren't bursting into song at the grocery store, at least not any grocery store I go to. I need to start stepping up my grocery store game, I guess. But that's going to be a presentational style. Avant-garde is something that's seen as like ahead of its time, or experimental theater. So if you've ever gone to a theater and you're like, what are these people doing? This is weird. Are they all wearing blue face paint and doing a yo-yo and that's the show? That's probably an avant-garde situation where it's something that is experimental or something like that. And oftentimes there will be masks involved in presentational performances as well. So for contemporary acting training, like the book mentions, usually back in the day, if you wanted to be an actor, you would do it like an apprenticeship, like a lot of other professions, where you try to get in with a theater and learn from watching it happen and hoping that you can get in there. Today, oftentimes at a college, university, like I said, I have an acting class on campus that I teach, and most universities, colleges will have theater programs and acting classes, or you can do private classes and coaching. People will do that as well. The actor's tools, we can hit on. I wanted to hit on. So that's really the difference between presentational and representational. So realistic versus more of an over-the-top performance. So now I want to talk a little bit about stage versus film acting, because those are going to be very different experiences. So acting for the stage is you're going to build the role gradually. So you're going to sort of really start at the beginning and build this character gradually. Whereas acting for film, you could shoot out of sequence. So you may be doing the final scene first. You may be doing something in the middle before you've really had the rest of it done. So those are going to be different things. In stage, you have to be able to sustain a performance. So you've got to be able to do it like you're doing it the first time, maybe 2 times a night for 6 months, depending on what kind of production that you're in. You may have to do that same thing over and over and over again and make it look fresh. So that is a challenge for a stage actor. Versus acting for film, you're going to learn your line in pieces. So you may only do it, you may do it many, many times for the right take, but you are doing like the same scene and doing it in pieces versus doing the entire performance. So in stage, you have to be able to project vocally and physically. So you have to be able to, even if it sounds like you're having a conversation face to face, you've got to project so people can hear that in the back of the room without shouting. It's not shouting at people. You have to project your voice where they can hear you. And you have to project physically, where you may have to do something a little bit bigger than it would be in real life so people can see it happen. And also think about the makeup for theater. The stage makeup is a lot thicker and bigger than if you were doing film acting, where you have to use subtle gesture, expressions, and voice. So you're a lot more subtle. You don't want to over the top dramatically go with it because it's right there and people can hear you and see you. So you have to retain spontaneity with repeated performance in a stage situation, like I mentioned. And for acting for film, you may have minimal rehearsal. You may not get to rehearse as much as you would like. In stage, you get an immediate response from the audience. So there's that you have that energy to feed off of, like we talked about live theater versus watching a movie. And in acting, you have to do instant repetition. So you may have to do that same scene over and over and over again, right in a row, that you wouldn't do on the stage. So if you have the acting bug out there, think about which one would you rather do, stage or for film? Which one do you prefer, seeing theater live or seeing it on the film? I also want you to kind of think about, for our discussion post this week, I want you to think about who is your favorite actor? And I'll type this question down, but who is your favorite actor and why? I want to see why exactly, specifically. Not because they're hot, or, I mean, maybe that's a reason, but I want some more. Like, what performances specifically have you noticed that was really good acting, and what makes a really good actor? So those are some things to think about this week. I look forward to hearing what you have to say.